Welcome to the Great Data Learning Fest Season 2. So let me give you a background to this. We have been in the business for the last 2 years, and on April 18th, 2020, we completed 2 years. And especially that was a time, very testing times for all of us because of the pandemic, and we had a lot of lockdown happening. So we as a company thought that why don't we initiate some kind of a learning mechanism that people get some time to learn, get to sense of what are the things happening, and especially in the most evergreen and the most happening sector. I remember in 2004 and 2005, the telecom industry was the sunrise industry or the sunshine industry, what people used to say. And now if you see the current 2 years and the last 1 year, there has been a lot of emphasis on data, a lot of emphasis on data science, data learning. So we thought that why don't we create a forum online where we try and educate people and give them some imparting the knowledge about data science and its applications in different facets of the industry. Now, obviously, we had a challenge on how do we go about doing it. So we experimented it last time with very few important people, and we had a very good success. So yeah, the Great Data Learning Fest, which it's called, we had a season 1 in the month of April onwards till the end of May, where we actually had people coming from all different walks of functions. And especially as a business, we focus on the micro, small and the medium entrepreneur sector. So we were very grateful and honored to have very interesting eminent people. So we started with Mr. Srinivasan, who's the associate professor in Jamnalal Bajaj. He spoke about the importance of data in strategy, which was followed by a very eminent company known as Saath Health. Ms. Aditi Hazra, she spoke about the importance of data in their company. It was a very interesting case study where they are actually a health and social health tech startup, and they do a lot of amazing work. They already have almost 1 lakh downloads of their apps. So they spoke about how they actually imbibe the data from the day one of their business and how it has really fructified in their business. So that was the second session which we started with. Then we had a gentleman known as Shashank, who again runs his business known as Balcal Nutrify, especially a dietitian group of clinics. And he spoke about how his business actually rocketed in the market through the help of a very detailed processing of data in terms of planning the market, planning the distribution. And then we had someone from the startup ecosystem, interesting gentleman, Dr. Satyaranjan Acharya, who's also the director of Entrepreneur Development Institute of India. So he spoke about the importance of data in the startup ecosystem and what a startup needs to look at when it comes to data. A very enterprising session. And we also had someone like a very eminent writer, Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai. He was actually focused on how data helps in a leadership perspective. Ancient Indian philosophy of Chanakya, which is the ancient Indian management of study. So Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai, is an eminent writer. He has been a bestseller in most of the books. So he focused on how data can help in building a mindset of leadership and what are the key things a leader should look at, especially when building a data-driven organization. And this was the whole program which we started in the last time, and there were 2 more people who we had. Then we actually thought of, why don't we continue with this engagement with people so that people learn something new about the entire process of data. And hence we came up with the season 2. Now, very interestingly, because business has been grateful to us, the market has been grateful to us. So we also have an amazing lineup of people. And what we have done, 2 changes. First change, what we did is we didn't do it consecutive. We tried to look at being on a weekend on a 5 to 6 and 6 to 7. So only today's session starts at 5 o'clock. Rest of the sessions go on from 6 to 7. I think that was one of the small error which I could find out. So every session starts from 6 to 7. It's a 40-minute session by the personality, which is followed by a 20-minute question and answer session. So that is part A. The part B is every Friday and Saturday, starting from today onwards to 31st of July, we will be having speakers, and I'll talk about who are they as I take you through the slides. And post which on the 1st of August, we're going to have a grand panel discussion. We're getting some amazing people who have been stalwarts in their industry. We have someone who has been the CEO of the Vodafone Bombay Circle. We have someone who's primarily driving the entire CIM SME approach. And we are also having someone out of India who's a CIO. So we're going to be having amazing amount of people who are going to be talking about the importance of data. And that would actually give us a perspective of how, as a small and medium entrepreneur or an MSME or even an SMB, how they can actually look at data and build their business. So that's been the story of the Great Data Learning Fest. So let me quickly talk about our company to just give you a perspective of what we do, so that you get a sense of how we could probably engage with all of you further. And that has been the first part of it. It will be 15-20 minutes, and then we will invite Mr. Shivraman to talk about the importance of data in project management. Okay, so let's not waste time. So let's go ahead. Okay, so Tatvamasi, we are an agile data strategic management consulting and training partnerships for organizations. So that's what we do. We focus only on data. Our objective of business is to help organizations build a data-driven one. So as a company philosophy, if you look at, we are a company who completely want to identify with the customers, build ethical and transparent relationship, offer practical solutions with our expertise, and thereby transforming them to a data-driven organization. So when I talk about a data-driven organization, obviously every company has its own status of data curve. Somebody are farly evolved, like any new age company on e-commerce, like Swiggy or any company you look, they are farly evolved in the adoption and adherence of data practices. Whereas some old economy companies who are running the manufacturing companies or a service company, probably they may not be in that state of the data curve of the entire data adoption. So as a company, we believe that SMEs are the biggest contributor to the Indian economy, and we need to work with them in every facet of our business. And that's where we focus on not only just working on analytics, we also focused on building a robust MIS or a management information systems for them, and that is where we actually look at. So let's go ahead. So what do we do? So quickly to talk to you about our values. As a company, because we work on data a lot, we look at process-driven behavior. We have a very clear ethical and a transparent approach. And most of the solutions, we don't recommend any software to be purchased, because we believe that a lot of business, a lot of analytics can be done with your Excel. And that's where we try and help you in driving those analytical approaches so that you start building your data-driven company. And definitely, as any consulting or a management consulting company, our endeavor is to be practical and result-oriented, because that's where we actually thrive in growing your business and simultaneously trying to make our businesses bigger and better. So let's go ahead. So I'll just quickly wanted to share what is the MSME story today. And this has been talked about the town today. If you see the current scenario, a lot of SOPs, a lot of initiatives have been given by the government on the MSME sector. You talk about an Atmanirbhar scheme, you talk about the post-COVID resurrection plan. A lot of banks are working on it. SIDBI does a lot of stuff to MSMEs. So primarily one of the bigger concerns, and wherever we have been into a lot of forums, we always think that, one of the challenges which MSMEs go through is a financial challenge. Well, we don't deny that. That's definitely one of the bigger areas of, which actually makes us constraint of the growth. But however, there has been a lot of additional constraints which we need to overcome. And if we need to really look at, toppling the other large Asian economies like China or any other Asian economy, I think there has to be a lot of digitalization and a lot of focus on the infrastructure building. And that's where, MSMEs stand today. So to quickly give you a story about this. So if you see, MSMEs in India are actually pegged at $25.8 billion as a market for the emerging technologies. So by 2020, the entire market for emerging technologies in MSMEs is pegged around $25.8 billion. And that's like a huge amount of money. Estimated 7 crore million estimated registered firms lie in India. Some are registered, some are under-registered, but thanks to UDay scheme and Udyog Aadhar, most of them are into the registered mechanism. Now, interestingly, if you see some statistics, 83% of MSMEs actually use ICT. So when I talk about ICT, it's information communication technology for finance and accounting. So you would definitely see, if you talk to any MSME, they would definitely have some kind of financial software for the business. It could be a Tally, it could be any other bookkeeping approach or a software. Also, 75% of the entire MSMEs use tools for HR and admin. Today, most of the SMEs have gone into the space of, being into appraisal system, HR management system. HRMS is a widely used kind of application. Also, if you see, very, very interestingly, just 68% of the MSMEs actually use ICT for marketing and sales. When I talk about marketing and sales in terms of a regular use of customer relationship management software, a Salesforce automation software, all of these are hardly used by most of the people. And if you see, out of 100, 68% just use that. And lastly, in the production, because if you see the Indian environment of MSMEs, almost 40% of the MSMEs are into the manufacturing sector. And that is very, very large to actually implement and use analytics, especially in the production area, manufacturing output, in terms of waste management, in terms of error management. A lot of things could be done there, optimizing of your production capacities. So this is what is the current story. However, if you see, there are some more challenges. This has been a nice growth for SMEs, no doubt about it. We almost contribute to 30% all of the GDP of Indian market. And I think we almost contribute to 50% of the employment also. So put together the 100 public listed companies, and in front of them, the 7 crore SMEs are the largest lot. I have been a part of a lot of consulting assignments, a lot of teaching assignments in colleges, and we keep on regularly looking at MSMEs as one of the key growth drivers of Indian industry. I have seen that shift happening in most of the management colleges, where the college authorities are actually looking at doing internships in MSME sector. There is a huge amount of thought process of getting into a final placements. And I think it shows a very nice positive story about how MSMEs can be grown in India. However, a couple of challenges, if you see in the entire 7 crore market, only 5% have web presence. When I say web presence, it could be a website, it could be any kind of initiative on the digital. Very, very inadequate access to technology. So technology is one of the key barriers of growth. And I think somewhere down the line, it does not the technology adoption which plays a role. It is about the cost estimation of technology, which actually spirals down the SME to not to take it or not to endorse it. Definitely a fragmented marketing platform. There is no proper marketing platform. There is not a 360-degree approach where a complete leverage of CRM systems are in place. The challenge is, I have seen in most of the MSMEs today, the CRMs are used, purchased, but hardly seldom actually leveraged. So, and most of the CRMs have very, very beautiful reports, reporting outlines. But the problem is you don't have data to feed this as an input, so that you get a proper output in terms of visualization or reports. And that's something because sometimes the data itself is missing. The capturing of data is a challenge to most of the MSMEs. A lot of data is on the paper, a lot of data is scribbled, and data structures are missing. And it's also a mammoth task for an MSME today to actually punch in the data and get it into a proper structured form. Obviously, when there is no investment focus on a particular subject, which is very strategic like data, resource allocation becomes very tough. And being an MSME, it's very important to understand where do I put my resource and money to get the most optimum outcome. And that's the regular thought every MSME entrepreneur has. And I think that's completely relational to the fact that we are not endorsing technology or any kind of an technology-based product. Also, very, very interestingly, skilled manpower is a challenge. You see the data science course, which all the education institutes, and very correctly they advertise about the future of business, the most employable activity by 2020, when there is a need of some 20 lakh people. And it's very true. And it is important that, we should upskill ourselves in data analytics and data science perspective. And the facet of the point is you need not really get into huge programming or get into the mass idea of, getting into learning. It's about understanding that how I can leverage data, which whatever I have, and Excel is an amazing tool to start with. And we will talk about it as we go ahead during the days. And definitely there is a resistance to invest because it doesn't show them instantaneous result. Now, very last, and this is an ironical stuff which happens in the market. So SMAC, which is basically known as social, mobile, analytics and cloud, it is used by us as entrepreneurs, but not for our business. So let me give you a very interesting example. Everybody in this forum uses a mobile phone. So there is mobility, which is 120% in. Second is analytics. We all use analytics on our phone or for any app or any kind of activity. Like, there will be a lot of people who are into sports. They might be using a different kind of application which gives you a tremendous analysis of your sporting activity, your time duration, all these things. We use it for ourselves. Cloud, we are using cloud for a long time. A Gmail is a very, very classic example of a cloud. And obviously, social media, we don't have to talk about, because every person on this, every second day, every third person is actually tweeting or writing a post or putting a comment in. So this is widely used by all of us. But when it comes to my business, we don't think about it. We don't actually use these technologies to leverage our business. And these are the challenges which we are going through. And if we have to mitigate these challenges, we need to understand how data is fruitful for our business. What are the things it can help you with? So that has been our endeavor as a company, not only to support in terms of consulting approach, but also to create that awareness of increasing the data adoption. And that's been one of the outcome of these kind of forums which we try and create. And that's what I wanted to share. Now let me go ahead quickly. But there are definitely improving positive trends for MSMEs. And these are, people are shifting from social mobility to mobility, analytics, cloud, and social. A lot of companies are really thinking of building a business intelligence to increase revenues. And obviously, BI platforms are definitely hot in the market for doing these. Most of the companies have started using a lot of lead management capability solutions, and a lot of them which are free, Pipedrive, Salesforce automation ones. People are now in MSMEs, which is more understanding and focused on a buyer's market, which is always was a seller's market. So that is a focused approach on customer delight rather than just a customer delivery. I think that's been one of the biggest shifts since the digitalization approach the last 4-5 years. Obviously, after the GDPR initiative of global compliance, there has been a huge amount of focus on cybersecurity, customer data protection. And lastly, today we all are using and literally milking the social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course the TikTok, which was there. All of these are really being used for a marketing initiative. All of these was more personal, but the trends are shifting. There has been amazing amount of offers given by all of these social media giants to drive in your post, to drive in people. It could be a call to action like participating in an event, or to endorsing and buying a product. So this is what the shift is happening. Now, how do we leverage this shift? How do we leverage this shift is something which we need to understand. Now, in this whole process of shift and the entire transformation journey, we are here to help you plug these gaps. And so we wanted to share what we do as a company. So who's our ideal customer? So we actually thought about this a lot. I come from a very highly 20 years of a corporate experience where we very clearly looked at building a marketing plan, building the segment. But when we look beyond that, SMEs are highly heterogeneous, highly inelastic, and there is a lot of things which are very different for every MSME. So we thought that the best way to connect to a customer and help him build his business is, we are looking at those who want to transform their business by using data, by building and digitalizing their existing data, seeking validation of your business models. And this is very important. Today, after the COVID scenario, if you see, there's a huge amount of shift in what I am planning to do as a business next 3 months, because the existing business was working in an environment which is completely different. So we keep on telling about this fact that there is a new normal, and that is what is happening. So we help in seeking the validation of your business models, probably analyze it to an extent so that you can start identifying opportunities for your business. And definitely, as an analytics person, we will try and help you with data models, eventually building your decisions for a higher growth. We always say this to every MSME in the market, saying that we are not here to question your wisdom. we probably help you back up your wisdom with the data so that whenever you take a decision, it is very simple that yes, I already had the wisdom to do it, which 99% of the MSMEs have. That 1% of data actually seals your decision-making process. And that is that 1% we try and help the organizations in the MSME sector. Okay, going forward, let me quickly tell you what we do as a business. We do three things, very simple. We do analytics, which is basically helping in cleaning, identifying data sets, cleaning the data sets for you. Models, using advanced analytics, we build models. We do business consulting, and I say business consulting. What happens is when data is spoken about, data actually cuts across your entire function, be it sales, be it marketing, be it strategy, be it finance. All of it is needed by data. So what we try and help is, because of the virtue of our work on analytics, we end up doing a lot of work on focusing on how do I help you in strategic business planning. Before that, we also help in trying to identify the gaps in data. So we do a lot of programs which are basically known as a data audit program. All through these years, we've been living with a lot of audits and ISO audits, process audits, business audits. So we also wanted to focus on data audit. So what we do in data audit, we do three things. We first ask one question: is every stakeholder or every touch point of your business digitalized? So that means if you're running a B2B business, anybody, if I come to your office and I'm talking to you for 15 minutes, is my data recorded in your business and can it be retrieved in a particular way whenever you want it? That is means by digitalizing your existing data or digitalizing your stakeholder data. Your stakeholder could be vendors, customers, board members, walk-in customers, your internal employees, your external employees, all of them. The second thing what we ask is there a data workflow seamless in your organization? Now, when I talk about a data workflow which is very seamless, it actually means that, most of the times in my experience, I have seen that, the finance guy comes up with a figure in the company and the sales guy says that, these figures are not right. And you end up in a review only trying to justify the number, but do not get into a very positive, proactive decision making on what next to be done. So that's the second thing which we look at in the data audit process, where we try and help the customer understand how is the data workflow in his company moving, or do you have a very transparent approach of seamless transfer of data from one system to other system? You already have a CRM in place, you already have a Tally or a financial package in place, and probably you may have 3-4 different softwares for different applications, especially in the manufacturing sector. So is this data going seamlessly in your business? Are you in a position to see in a bird's eye view with everything, creating a dashboard? So that's the second thing which we try and attempt to help you with. And the third is obviously, we ask the entrepreneur 2 decisions which he has taken by gut in the last financial year. And we try and see whether that gut was right or wrong, was data backed up correctly or wrong. Correctly or not. And that is what we basically mentioned by data audit. So that gives a company a perspective of how data can help him in the business. And then probably we move ahead in working the entire data science process, identifying the right question, what is the objective of that particular problem, preparing the data for, understanding and trying to review that problem, using some methodologies like data mining. Then we probably visualize that data point for them to get some more insights, because the way you look at data also gives you a different perspective of decision making. Seeing a data in a table has a one particular aspect, but the same data, if you see in a pie chart or a bar graph, it becomes a completely different thought process for an entrepreneur. And trust me, I should compliment and congratulate a lot of the MSMEs here, because the moment we even start with talking about a visualized data, the decisions are already made in their head, because they are so much equipped with that wisdom. They just needed that lead. Somebody show me this data in this way, and I know what is to be done. And I've experienced this with both of SMEs before. We don't even actually need to get into a proper structure. They immediately come and tell us, you know what, Venkatesh, I know this is what is the problem. I know to fix this. So let me do that. So it becomes so accelerated mode when we start working on this. And the last, obviously, one of the initiatives is this, where we build a lot of adoption and awareness for people. And that's where we do by training program. So we do 3 different training programs for 3 different levels of people. We do training programs with 2.5-day workshops for CEOs of the company to actually think of building a data-driven business, where we have a 2.5-day workshop, residential, and obviously not now because of the current situation. We will do it online now, where we talk very clearly about how to build a resource planning, how do you evangelize and look at your data-driven company, how much time would it take for you to deliver that, how much time would you take to digitalize your business. All of these is what we do for the 2.5 days, so that a CEO is well equipped to identify the right team member to help him drive that particular objective. The second is we also do a one level down training program and workshops for first level managers, where we try and help them to imbibe new technologies, imbibe new initiatives in the data, explaining them right from Excel to different modeling, so that they can start using that and build their company. And definitely the last part is, as we see, there is a huge amount of gap between a corporate company ecosystem and an environment, and then the MBA ecosystem, typically the students who come out of the fresh MBA. So we try and bridge a gap there by helping them understand the nuances of data and how they become data confident when they join a company. Be it an internship, be it a final placement, we try and help them into getting those structures in place. And so this is what we do, training programs. Apart from this, we do a lot of customized training programs for people, especially like a faculty development program for a lot of faculties, verticalization program, like talking about HR audit and HR analytics, talking about production analysis. So they are very, very focused, customized programs depending on the sector, which we definitely help them with. So that's what we do quickly. Some flagship offerings. So we work in 3 basic verticals, which is known as basic, intermediate, and advanced for a simple understanding. And because we are a company which is very deeply rooted in the Indian culture and the heritage, so we also have, speaking about these product names, as Adhara Bhutastar, which is the fundamental, then the Madhyamastar, which is the intermediate one, and Vigadastar, which is the advanced one. We also do a data audit, which is known as Antar Visheshtana. And as we spoke about workshop and trainings, we do all of that, which is known as Karyashala. And last is we are attempting a new initiative, which is storytelling to data. So we have listened to a lot of activities on storytelling today. People talk stories. There are a lot of initiatives, sessions happening on building a good story for your product pitches, for your discussions points with the team, for your board of director meetings. So we are trying to experiment that by saying, why don't we create and weave the story with the data, so that what happens as an astute salesman, you not only have a good understanding about storytelling, but if you weave with that data points of your company, that becomes a right kind of a selling approach. And you really don't need to convince the customer on the selling approach, because you've already spoken about your numbers. You've already spoken about your numbers in a very beautiful storyline. So we're trying to attempt this first of its kind. I don't sense anybody is trying to do that, or even they do that, it'll be good for us to learn more. So we're trying to do it in this Q3 starting, and that's going to be a one-day workshop which we're trying to experiment. So we will share and talk more about it as we speak. So how do we approach our business? Very, very interestingly, so we have a very dedicated, planned way of approaching our business. We just don't get into something. The second part, and I wouldn't want to emphasize anything more than this, the second part is important, which is creating a scope of activity. So till the time the objectives and the questions are not clear, we won't move to any of the activities. So any analytical approach starts with the question, why do I want it? And what will happen if I do that? I think these are very simple questions, but the objective of asking these questions in the right manner and the right process deciphers a lot of answers and a lot of activities on that. And that's what we try and do. Okay, so quickly to get into the, that's a small brief about what we do as a company. So we thought, let me start as the first day. Please do write down to any of the requirements you have. We will be more than happy to serve you. Our team members are there on this call to help you with that. Now let's quickly come to what is in store for us in the next 1 month. So we have Mr. Shivakumar Srinivasan, a gentleman, and I'll introduce him a bit. We will talk about the importance of data in project management. Then we have a very interesting person. She is the marketing director of Intermiles, the erstwhile Jet Privilege. She is going to be talking about the importance of data in customer value proposition. And that's going to be happening soon. That is tomorrow in the evening. Then the next Friday, we have again a gentleman from a Big Four consulting firm. He will going to be speaking about the importance of data in the corporate finance. That is typically the corporate finance in terms of buying and selling the companies. And he's going to talk from an MSME perspective. So that's going to happen the next Friday. After that, we have again an interesting person from Vodafone. Navnath Wadekar he's the head of digital transformations for Vodafone, and he is going to be talking about importance of data in the shift from physical to digital. And that's going to be one of the interesting areas. Then we will have Mr. Abhijit Varmana. I would really want everybody to be there because Abhijit is a person who is actually from United States of America. He's going to be joining us and tuning in early morning for us. And he is the director of KPMG Analytics for the KPMG Analytics for Americas as an entire continent and ex-KPMG India. So he's going to give a perspective of what is the future of analytics in India and Asia perspective, and very, very futuristic. It could be a wealth of information which you could get from him. Obviously, then we have in the next week, we have Mr. Ketan Patel. Ketan is the CEO and founder of Cashify. It's one of the largest and the fastest growing microfinance company. And he's going to talk about the most important part for SMEs, which is the working capital management and how data can help us to understand the working capital management. Now, that's what Ketan will be speaking about. Afterwards, Mr. Biju Balgopal, he's going to talk about very critical part. You know, this is one of the challenges which SMEs always face, which is about the business automation. So which are the, how business automations to be approached and taken? Like, should I take a SFA Salesforce automation today? Should I take a Zoho book tomorrow? Should I get into cloud-based work, and is cloud important? So, and why will it help, and how data can help you think about it and how it can be applied to get more data. So Biju is from Bangalore. He runs his own company known as Renado Consulting on the business automation. So Biju will be speaking about importance of data in business automation. Then we have a very different perspective where Mr. Pratik Kundu, he runs an organization, and he's actually a part of the organization, which is an NGO, and they do a lot of work. In fact, in the COVID times, very, very honored to say that there's been a tremendous amount of work done by this company, letshelp.org, and they do a lot of work for people. And he is going to share his experience that despite being an NGO, how was the entire focus of data which helped them to grow in terms of thought process of connecting to companies, connecting to people, and connecting to do business. And last, on the 31st of July, we have a very, very senior person, ex-advertising head for the Hindu newspaper and ex-Rajasthan Patrika, and currently an entrepreneur running a financial consulting business known as Rembarrier. So he is going to talk about his multitude of experience in data, like how in media, how an MSME can look at data and build a proper media approach for getting the best possible outcomes in the business. So that's the lineup in the next whole month. And the last day on the 1st of August, I have not spoken about it here. On the 1st of August, we're going to have an interesting panel discussion among very, very senior people, ex-CEO of Vodafone Mumbai. Then we have the president of CIM SME speaking. We're possibly having someone who's going to be again from out of India, who's a CIO of a company. They are all going to give their experiences and share their talk on how SMEs can build a data-driven organization. So it's going to be a 1-hour panel discussion, and they will be sharing their insights over the 30, 40 years of experience. And that will be amazing learning to complete this whole great data learning fest. So that's the story, all of you. I would want you all to be there. Tune in on every day, every weekend for 1 hour, and definitely get the best out of it in all of these sessions. So with that, I complete my presentation, and I'm honored to invite Mr. Shivkumar Srinivasan for this next program. So let me quickly end up by saying, in God we trust, and all others please bring data though. Yeah. So let me go to the next slide. And I will give you a brief introduction of Mr. Shivkumar Sir. Shivkumar Sir has been a veteran in the business, and his last assignment was as CEO of the Gems and Jewelry Council in India. Mr. Shivkumar is a PMP professional, so a certified project management professional, almost with 35 years of experience. One of the key things which has been his success story has been that the earliest retail rollout in this country, which was Shoppers Stop, was actually managed and demonstrated and delivered by Mr. Shivkumar. So I think he has a tremendous retail experience coupled with a project management focus and an engineer by profession. I think, I wouldn't want to talk much on that. Let him, take the course for the next 45 minutes to 1.5 hours. And all to you, sir. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining, Mr. Shah. And it's a pleasure to you be on board. And let me introduce him, and it's all yours, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, welcome to the Great Data Learning Fest Session 2. Mr. Venkatesh, it was a very nice speech and very exciting and, pumping energy on the, opening session of this Great Data Learning Fest Session 2. I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Sivakumar Srinivasan, a certified project management professional with 35 plus years of project experience. What I talk, eat, breathe, sleep is projects, and projects, nothing more. And so whatever I talk will be based on the background of project and the foreground of project, nothing more, nothing less. I'm at this certification, if just for the people who are not conversant with what is PMP. PMP is a project management professional. It's a certification from Project Management Institute, USA. It is globally accreditation certificate, which is valid for 3 years. One has to be a practicing project management professional working in any domain of project to continue this certification. And it is globally recognized. It is not industry specific. It is not domain specific. So a certified project professional is engaged in project activities globally on any industry, be it construction, pharmaceutical, mining, rocket launch, marketing, product launch. It could be any product, any industry, anywhere in the geography of the world, and it could be of any scale. For example, it could be as big as a metro or metro line being done versus a small MSME where some accounting software upgradation to be done. So so the size is not the criteria, the scale is not the criteria, geography is not the criteria, domain knowledge is not the criteria. Project management itself is a skill on its own, and the project management is driven by data, and data only. Nothing more, nothing less. I will just briefly, quickly say what are the contents, and I will try to complete my session in next some 25-30 minutes. Though the project management content alone could be talked for about 200-300 hours, I will actually restrict it to less than 25-30 minutes, and then keep the rest of 30 minutes for Q&A or interactive session, so that it makes relevance of important for the day. So the meaning of the data, we talk a lot about data. What is the meaning of data and what is the importance of data? Data is, in my interpretation, data is nothing but the facts, the true contents actually of the business, which means that is a real fact, and it is only statistically collated for an historical comparison to arrive at some decision point or to decide the future course of action. So data is basically fact. The nearest word that is used in this digital world is data. So the impact of data in the business. What is the impact of data in the business is actually it improves the process. That is the first impact. The more the data, the more correctness of the data, the more quantified data, the longer the data we have. So it improves the processes of the business. It aligns the business to the required objectives. Okay, suppose if profit is the objective, we know what is the data physically available and how the profit is achieved, and where does the profit come from, what categories profit can be maximized. So data is very important, and Mr. Venkatesh actually has explained it in depth. Just to give a background of what we are going to talk, what is a project and what is not a project. People who are not conversant with what is a project is clearly defined as which has a clear start and clear end, a pre-decided goals and objective. A project is initiated, organized with specific set of tools and resources of the organization, which is internal or external, and it should be unique and it is not repeatable. So these are the words that is generally used to define project. There are, if you Google if you Google out, or if you get into a definition of projects, there are various methods of defining what is a project. it is very important to understand a same person in an MSME organization will work in a project environment and will work in a non-project environment. It is not that project is a very specialized function. Though the project as a function is very special, but it does not necessarily require always a specialist to work on a project if it is not a full-time project. For example, let's say there is an accounts manager, finance manager. He can actually monitor or oversee or run a project if it is an amalgamation of a company or merging of a company or looking for a buying or investment opportunities. These are considered as project because it has got a specific objective. It has got a specific resource that could be used, not used, and it has got an opportunity that could be evaluated. It has got a definite end, or there are goals set, and they are all not routine. For the same accounts manager in this example, you could be running a banking transaction. You could be running payments, which is not a project. Because the payment is nothing but a transaction that must happen on a regular basis with the same finance person. But when it comes to investment assessment, that is considered a project. So let's say a CFO will sit for a project review meeting from a finance perspective for an initiative that was initiated by the entrepreneur or the bigger higher level of the organization's management. But the same CFO, when it comes to accounting, finance, he will be actually doing an operations role. Anything which is repetitive, which is not a unique service, or which is not the end result is not a specific delivery of a deliverable, is not a project. So that's the clear dividing line between a project and not a project. So project management is the skill, is actually organizing and planning the required skills, tools, techniques, and enable and monitor, track, control the project using all the resources, both internal and external resources, to achieve the objectives of project and lead the complete project team of all the resources to achieve the objective of the project. So this method or this management is called project management. In fact, in the next few slides, we will see the details of project management processes, project management groups, project management tools, techniques. All of them will be, we will actually talk into little detail, going forward. So the importance of data in project management need not be explained further because the core of project management is data. If we can, this is nothing but a simple one snapshot of what does the data mean and what is the definition of, let's say, a work performance which is measured in project environment. I just picked up 3 specific examples which are most popular to define what is the meaning of a data, what is the definition in a project environment, project management environment, with respect to some examples. If it is just a work performance measure, which is not measured in context and in the full content, it remains a data. Let's say 2.8 in railways. Okay. Yesterday, there was a train which was 2.8 kilometer long train. When we say 2.8 kilometer in railways, it could be distance between 2 railway stations. But there was a train which was 2.8 kilometer long. So when a data is put into the context and read within the context, then it becomes a performance or it becomes a measurable, understandable information. So work performance data is nothing but an observation of a raw information, which is nothing but the data, and identify what is performed and what is already carried out. So data is always, in most situations, data is a historical data. For example, GDP data is the historical data. So data is always a past, and when it is put into perspective and analyzed in context, it becomes an information. So work performance information, there are examples, and when the information is collated and analyzed in the way we want, as Mr. Venkatesh was telling, a pie chart or a graphical method of representing, that becomes a report. In other words, a report is seen generally by the senior most end result is a report, or a specific the result what we look for by the senior most management is a report. Performance analysis is generally done by the middle management. Data is a real fact. These are the 3 differences. These are the fundamental difference between data, information, and reports. There's a small video of what are the contents. It's a quick video of about less than 3 minutes of video, which talks about what are the contents of the data that are required for the project to be running. You can just play that video, please. Yes, it will start.
Today we're talking about how to use data to be a better manager. Well, we've all heard the phrase, the numbers don't lie, the numbers tell a story, or you can't.
You can see the background of how much of it contents are written on this board, which gives the the magnitude of importance of data in project management environment.
Manipulation and falsification of the numbers, which in most cases is illegal. So let's assume we have legal data, which is facts, figures, information that is stored, and in today's time, typically in a computer. So why is data important? Well, data helps to monitor and control. It helps tell a story. It provides trends and also indicate variances. So how do we get this data? So we can get data through reports, research, or even polls, or many other ways, but these are a few. Then what are some aspects of the data that we get? Well, some data can be historical data, which is helpful to help us to project ahead for things that are similar. It also, there's also real-time data, which helps us make decisions all along the way to maybe help change course or directions. But the data must be accurate and relevant. We've all heard garbage in is garbage out. So how can this help a manager? So, well, managers are responsible for their team members and their work. So they're striving to get better results. They're striving for happy and fulfilled people with work-life balance, and so that they can learn, grow, and profit for their family. So how does a manager take this data and get this for his team and team members? So let's look at two aspects, the people and schedules, just to name a few. Well, if we're talking about people, we're talking about who do we have on the team and what are they doing? Do we have enough team members, or do we have too many? Do we need more training? Do we need more skills? And in some cases, why are they leaving? When we look at schedules, we're looking at our team members. Are they working too much? Maybe do we have some that are working too little? We can also ask, are they finishing their work or deliverables on time? And can we delay or expedite some of the projects or some of the things that they're working on? So these are some of the aspects we can look at to help get these. And I think a success key to get the data, whether it's historical data or real-time data, is to have a reliable tool. So if you need a tool that can help you with your data and be a better manager, then sign up for our software now at projectmanager.com.
So that was actually giving a lot of background information on how important is the data. So what we have spoken is project is nothing but a unique service or capability. It is temporary in nature because it has a definite and definite beginning, and it is not repetitive. It is very specific, and it is objective driven. Anything that fits into this definition can be considered as a project. And the more the projects MSME runs within the organization, the more successful it is, because an operational person, a person who does a activity repeatedly on any function, cannot actually devote his time other than his repetitive work. For example, if it is, let's say, a MSME, which is nothing but a production business, if they are a manufacturer of any product, let's say they are manufacturing a small supplier or a vendor to OEM of a big automobile factory. If he has to produce the same component repeatedly, that is a production job which a production manager has got skills, tools, techniques to produce regularly on shifts. If two more machines to be added or a new product opportunity to be exploited in the market, the same production manager help is required to source the right machine again, and to identify the cost involved, space involved, technology involved, and the opportunity available in the market for producing that component. and achieving the business goal, expanding the business into a new product line. That is a project actually. But the person involved may be same in a MSME situation, because the same person can be assigned a project manager's role in the perspective of project management. And this is what actually I meant. The project manager actually is a person who will initiate the project, plan, do the cost estimate, do the budgeting, do everything, and then run this project parallelly apart from running his own stream in MSME scenario. So in a large organization, let's say organization as big as Reliance or large organizations where there will be a setup of something called project management office. That project management office, let's say in a large government organization, okay, they will actually operate the existing. For example, let's say an organization which builds metro rails across multiple regions of the country. They will have multiple projects. Let's say a company like L&T, they will have a PMO office, they will have operations separately, they will have projects separately, because operations in their own context is nothing but a set of projects. So a group of projects is managed by a portfolio management, a portfolio of projects. Under the portfolio, there will be multiple projects. So it is an hierarchy of defining. The topmost hierarchy is PMO, and below that is a portfolio management, which is nothing but a portfolio of projects. And below the portfolio, there are projects, which means multiple projects put together becomes portfolio. Multiple portfolio becomes reports to a PMO of organization. That is how large organization runs the projects. There is something called project management triangle. It is interesting, and if it is time permits, we will talk it. We'll talk about that at that length. It's actually a triangle, which is nothing but an equilateral triangle, which is 60 degrees of all the sides, which has a technical, leadership, and strategic requirements of the organization. If any project of which is applicable on the MSME has aligned with all these three objectives: strategic objectives of the business and the leadership objective, which means the entrepreneur will have his own objective. The leadership team of the organization will have its own needs, objectives, goals, requirements, and also technical requirement of the the technical functional requirement of the project. If all three are actually meeting together and connected together, then that becomes a triangle called PMI triangle, which is project. That is a triangle given by Project Management Institute, which is the best triangle. Any of these three is not connected with equal balance, then there is somewhere imbalance in any of the, it is called not aligned to correctly. Okay, I will talk about this PMP certification if it is interesting for this audience on the last part of my this thing. It is nothing but a certification course, which is nothing but a training required for a professional practicing project managers. I'll share that knowledge at the end of the session. We can proceed now. There are predominant, we will get the next 10-15 minutes. Actually, let us get into the core of project management. Project management has got 5 process groups, namely initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and control, and closing. These are the 5 process groups, and there is a definition given, which is very summary level with the definition marked here. What is the meaning of initiating a project? And it means like appointing a project manager, assessing the to define the broad scope, and writing a project charter. So there are existing data available in the organization. So all the 5 process groups is always followed in steps, and the project is monitored and controlled throughout all the 4 other process groups. No, just previous slide, please. There are 10 knowledge areas. You can see this circle, 10 knowledge areas. These are all specific knowledge areas: project scope management, time management, project cost management, quality, procurement, human resources management. All these 10 up to the stakeholder management are independently knowledge areas in project management. And all of them are actually interdependent. So if you see here, the first row on the top is the process groups which we spoke, which are 5 process groups and 10 knowledge areas, which is on the first column. There are 49 processes which is given by Project Management Institute. If you see all this one sheet gives the complete importance and the criticalness of the data. Everything is data here. all the 49 processes is nothing but data. If you see the first one, let's say 4.1, the top left, develop project charter. Project charter itself is the first initial document which is part of initiating the project. And on the same initiating the project process group, the project stakeholder management is identifying the stakeholder. Only these two things are done at the initiation stage. For example, let's say stakeholder management, identify stakeholder. Identifying stakeholders of the project is the most important thing. See, for example, let's say there is a big project that is happening. Let's say an implementation of a nuclear power plant. If stakeholders are not identified at the initial stage of the project, which means if all the stakeholders are not correctly identified, and there must be a separate specific plan to manage, engage the interest, involvement, power, authority, communication. There must be a plan for managing or controlling every stakeholder at every stage of the project is part of the project initiation. I will give a simple example. There was a project that was planned very hot in the news till some 6 months ago, 1 year ago, was the nuclear power plant that was abolished, stopped, because the stakeholder who were actually present there, living there in the villages, they felt that it is going to be dangerous for their livelihood. It is not that those stakeholders came into the existence after the implementation of the project. There was a miss of communicating the right project objectives to all the stakeholders in the beginning of the project. If it was done with there must be if it was communicated that the energy procurement, energy generation with this nuclear power plant will not incur any dangerous situation, or will not be damaging the natural resources like water or pollution, and it is going to only be the welfare of the society, it is going to be the development. If these contents are all if there was a plan to deal with those stakeholders 5 years prior, and if it was managed by the respective government bodies in a PR, there must be a separate PR plan or engaging those key stakeholders. One of the things that comes to my mind is if it is told all the families will be given an employment there, their government employment, simple, that is one solution. Or the land acquired, anybody who is giving the land for the project will be employed in the same manufacturing setup. That could be one of the solutions. So if the identifying stakeholder is very important, not only for the large projects, it is very, very important for a small project. For example, in MSME situation, we should know who is the buyer, who is the seller, who is going to produce this product, who are the end user, and what is the expectation of the end user, and what are the end benefits that the end user is going to be enjoying, and what is the need gap of the end user now presently. So it is not actually qualitative. It is actually person specific or a stakeholder specific. The definition of stakeholder as per the PMI is anybody who impacts the project or impacted by the project during, before or after the project is all stakeholder, either now or remotely. So the first one is project charter. The data that goes into the project charter is complete scope, which means whether it is the project scope, project requirements, project work breakdown at a broad level, and the timeline start end of the project, and also the cost required for the project, the quality baseline of the project, the key project estimates, deliverables, key cash flow of the project, the risk involved in the project, the broad risks, when it should be identified, who is responsible to track the risk of the project, and how the procurement will be conducted, and what is the responsibility and deliverables of the procurement. All this data, I repeat, are part of the project chart. The project charter is a very important document for MSME to define very clearly, this is what I am going to initiate today. For example, let's say in accounting system, requires an upgradation. If that is a small project, it is not about how much of money it is invested, because that will be covered under the estimated cost. It should be clearly say what is the scope, and what is not scope is also most important to say. It is out of my scope, I will not include in my project scope. So project charter is the first document. The next process group is planning. Planning has got the maximum number of processes here, and I will quickly run through the planning. It is always told well planned is half done. So done meaning actually it means execution. If it is planned well, it means it is half job is already done. So develop project management plan is the first thing, which is the integration, project integration management. The top left one, the project integration management, integrates all the other processes. It is not a process group on its own. It is not a knowledge area on its own. The project integration management integrates all other knowledge areas, and which means the project charter, if you see the 5.1, 6.1, 7.1, 8.1, all of them are management plan, which are respective to the respective knowledge areas. So planning deals with a complete, when we cross the project planning stage, which means we would have crossed how to deal with the stakeholder, how do we deal with the procurement, this is the method to deal with the risk, and this is the method to deal with procurement. It deals with everything, which means the planning deals with the complete work schedule and do's and don'ts. It's like a Bible or a directory of what are the things to be done. And if that is followed, then get into execution and then go back. Don't look back. Just implement what is given in the plan. So it is something like, if it is not planned, it is not supposed to be executed. If there is any change during execution, that should go back to the planning and then again come back to scope, project cost. See, somebody cannot actually change the specific. For example, let's say there's a contract given for supply of a product. There is a proto that is done, a rate is fixed, a quantity is fixed, and a proto is being given after the order is received. And then they say, I want a small change on this. Obviously, in Indian scenario, MSMEs will say, okay, sir, I'll do this change. But at that time, it is actually wrong in a business practice. It is actually wrong, though it is in practice. It should be told for this change, there is an impact on cost, there is an impact on time, there is an impact on effort. The tools that I have already made required to be modified. It is not that I will do it for free of cost. Whether it is a increase in the cost or decrease in the cost, that should be put back to the planning and evaluate it from all the previous data, run back through estimates, resource, stakeholder impact, whether it, and then again go back and then say this is the impact of the change, and if you approve, I'll again execute. Which means no stakeholder is authorized to ask for a change after the planning is signed off. That is the best practice at the time of execution of a project. Let's move to the executing part of it. Executing has got direct and manage project work and manage project knowledge. See, the project knowledge is nothing but the first column. So there is a knowledge that was built. Okay, at the time of execution, the core of integration, project integration management, is the data whatever we have already at the initiation, which is documented, and the data which is available at the planning stage. Those data are nothing but an accumulated knowledge. That knowledge should be managed is an integration of a project, and that is what is directed and managed, which is nothing but an execution of a project. And manage quality is one of the execution responsibility or execution process of a project management. Acquire resources, which means we are getting the physical resources in place for executing the project only at that stage, which is written here as 9.3. We don't recruit full resources at the beginning of the project. It is not that when we say, come on, invest today, we don't invest all our money or manpower at the beginning of the project. It is planned well, and it is written, it is actually, if you see 9.1, it is planned resource management. That is the time when we say, at this time, this resources in terms of manpower, material, all of them will be required. And execution is only implementing what is planned, nothing more, nothing less. So all the previous data is available at the planning stage. And implementing risk response. I will talk little later if the time permits about risk. Risk in the project is a very, very large subject. If you see horizontally, risk and integration has got maximum number of processes in this out of 49 process. We go to the next process group, which is monitor and control the project work, is part of project integration management. Integrated change control. I was talking about the changes quite a few minutes ago. Change is not a hindrance for a project management or a project. A project manager should be smart enough to welcome change, put back the change into a change control system, which is already predefined in the planning stage, collect all the data on for what basis or for what reason the change is asked for, whether the change cannot be just because someone asked for it, so I am doing it, or it should not be said yes or no For that reason, it should be clearly assessed. What is the need for that change? What are the benefits of the change? What are the impact of that change on scope, schedule, cost, quality, the resource, the time, the budget, the risk. So all of them should be assessed back and then go back to the person who asked for a change and then tell this is the efforts, this is, if the change has to be implemented, it should be replanned like this. Can we go ahead and then replan? Yes, no. Then actually the change should be implemented. Because when the change comes, there is a cost to change. In fact, if you statistically see, the cost of change is least at initiation stage. It is, let's say, at 20% of the cost. I'm hypothetically putting a number to this discussion. At a planning stage, when the execution started, or when the execution is just initiated, it may be 40%. When the execution is nearing completion, if the change is asked, the cost actually is the maximum. It could be sometimes as big as 80% of the project cost if it's a big change, depending on whether, what change it is required. For example, let's take up a construction industry. Let's say your flat is constructed and the promoter wants to sell the flat when the project is 90% complete. And the buyer says, no, each slab to slab distance here is 9 feet, 8 inches. I want 10 feet, 8 inches. It is physically not financially viable, though technically it is feasible to, reconstruct the building, possibly. So this change may not be viable financially. So this should be assessed and, communicated back to the stakeholder, the impact of the change before implementing a change. So just listening to a change and implementing a change as a data is not the right ethical practice in project management. This is clearly applicable and it is very, very sensitive, data. When it comes to smaller the project, the more the impactful it is. The limits are very, very thin. The margins are very, very thin. The variations permitted are very, very thin. Large projects, small variation could be absorbed. Smaller scale of project, even a very, very minor micro changes, variance also will have a big impact. And the next, monitoring and controlling on its own is not a process group because it is only monitoring and controlling, predominantly initiation, planning, executing, and closing. So it is actually a pivotal role of the other process groups. So it is actually a controlling activity. If you see the words, which is 5.6, 6.6, 7.4, all of them start with the word control or monitor. It is monitoring the risk. It is not controlling the risk because risk is not controllable. Risk is the definition of the risk is an event which needs to be equipped for, or we should actually have a plan to deal with if it happens, and we should actually anticipate if something goes wrong and what is the mitigation techniques we have. For example, let's say there's an earthquake that is going to happen, we should actually know we will actually have an insurance in place. So that is actually planned at the time of insurance. So we must identify the risk, and the risk should be monitored during the course of the project, which means we should keep on monitoring on a weekly. If a project runs for, let's say, 15 weeks, every day we should say, as per the risk register, the list of risk, whether the risk is likely to occur now or will not occur. If it is occurring, as per the same risk mitigation technique, we apply the same, approach, or we have to change the approach. So it is only monitoring here. Wherein other things are starting with the word control. Control the quality, which means there should be no deviation. It is not just monitoring the quality and then reporting. Wherein in risk, it is just monitoring, and if it occurs, then take a corrective action. Wherein monitor communication, which is just monitoring a communication, because different stakeholders, different formats, different contents, under different stages of a project, different duration of the project will require different communication methods. For example, in the beginning of the project, the financial cash flow format may be X. When we actually progress the project, when we are nearing the project closure, the same financial report of the project may be different. So we may be talking about earned value methods at the end of the project more, and we may not actually talk about as much in the beginning of the project. We may actually talk about what is the cash flow required versus fund flow available today, versus are we within the capex or are we not within the capex? Are we going to get the financial benefit? Yes, no. So this communication may be directed towards only to the finance person of the project. but monitoring the communication as per the communication management plan. It may be a simple Excel sheet in MSME scenario, but the situation here is it is only monitoring here and control the quality, control the cost. See, when it comes to cost, it becomes control because we can't actually allow to deviate. So the data, when it comes to cost, that data cannot have a deviation. That is controlling. If it's a schedule, it is a time related. When it is time related, it needs to be controlled because we can't allow deviation. So monitoring and controlling is a very important management skill. And there are so much of tools, techniques, software, and method, and inherent gut feel, and experience, expertise available in every industry, every organization on its own. Every MSME entrepreneur on his own is a professional project manager, in my personal opinion. On his own domain, he is expert on his own. And the last one is actually project closure. Project closure is a document which says which actually verifies what is given in the project charter, in this case 4.1, has been completely achieved. All the list of items as per 4.1 is achieved, yes, no. If it is yes, to what extent it is achieved, whether it is achieved 100%, 101%. See, for example, achieving more is not also considered, it is called gold plating in project management terminology. Something giving more than what is required, it may not incur additional cost. It may not incur additional, time. It may be giving more scope than what was planned for. The customer must have asked, and it may be possible with the same worker, with the same material, same time, but small additional effort, the product may be giving a more benefit. And if it is given, it is considered gold plating, which is not the right one. And also, if it is not under scope, not to be executed. So the project closure is actually financial closure, time closure. More importantly, in MSME, it is nothing but capturing the data. I repeat, capturing the data of the complete project. Imagine, let's say someone buys a residential apartment. How many times we get the drawing of electrical wiring? How many times we get the floor tile, make, model number, shade, code number, and the cost? How many times we get what is the paint shade which is used in my bedroom, hall, kitchen? How many times we get what is the source of a specific kitchen that was furnished and given to them? But when we go back after some 6 years, we go to electrician, and then the electrician will actually do his own jugaad to understand iska wiring kiya tha, iska Wi-Fi yahan pe dal de, and all such things happen. No, what if a contractor gives a working drawing of electrical conduits which are concealed? There is a data available with the contractor. When we go to a new buyer, let's say that the flat is being sold, he will ask for approved layout, approved drawings. The drawing will only one sheet of paper, which is part of the registered document. If it has got a set of drawings, set of bill of quantities, and then make of what is the material that is used, that data, is it not valuable? That's definitely more valuable. And there are professional builders who give this data to the end customer. In real life scenario, there are large societies where this data is not available with them. In terms of data, there is nothing, I don't find a more relevant example than this, or more simple example. The data available with the contractor, wherein he has already closed the project and which is already available with him, is not shared to the end user just because he has not asked for it. So closing the project is rich with the data. For the same contractor, if he has to do the next project, this becomes a reference manual, no? Because it has got all the cumulative contents of what was actually the original plan, what's planned in this project, what was executed in the project, what were the difficulties during monitoring and controlling of this project. All of them will be available, and it goes into a knowledge bank of repository called lessons learned. If he actually takes that lessons learned into the next project, which is similar in nature, will it not be useful for him? How many organizations actually capture this data in this lessons learned repository and digitize it and then make it always available as a data for future reference? Most organization actually skips and then forgets about documenting it. In fact, project management practice always say this lessons learned should be captured right from initiation throughout the project. During planning stage, there will be multiple meetings. capture the lessons learned. During execution, whatever is happening, capture the lessons learned. And all the lessons learned cumulatively becomes project closure. Mr. Venkatesh, I'm actually finished, done with this. Let's play this video.
I think that was really, really interesting, sir. And I think there's too much of focused project management approach. I think that's one of the bigger areas which we want to really learn. One second, there are some questions. I will be talking about few questions. So please, request all of you to please put the questions on the chat. I will try and help moderate it for sir to talk about it. And in the meanwhile, as we have those questions in a very interesting video from our Honorable Vice President who has spoken about the importance of project managers. And I think it's a very, very good and an important thing to watch. So here it goes.
We're in the era of a public-private partnership, PPP model, across the globe and particularly in India also. Project managers have been playing a vital role in both public and private sector, from infrastructure building to information technology, from telecom to the power sector to the health sector, and many more. However, to support fast growth across the sectors, the country requires more skilled talent. It has been estimated by 2027, India will need 70 lakh new project managers. So let me assure you that you are in the right place at the right time. This is your opportunity to contribute to your industry and to your country, because for each project implemented successfully within time and budget, there are hundreds, thousands, sometimes millions of people who stand to benefit. Sadly, our country does not have a good track record earlier of executing projects on time. This needs to change. Although transformation must be seen at all levels, the project managers play a key role and must act as change agents. The flash report that the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation published in April this year says that more than 25% of large central sector projects, that is cost about above 150 crores or more, are delayed beyond their scheduled date of completion. This is a reality. This is not to criticize anybody or any government or any party. This has been happening over the years. So we need to improve the execution of our projects. And the same is the case with regard to private sector also.
The opportunity, the scale size of the project, there's a huge scarcity in India on project management, execution. Actually, that is what it is being repeatedly told. When we actually, in India, there is no problem with resources. There is no, when I mean resources, I mean both skill, people, and also money. The problem is there is a problem in executing and delivering it on time, irrespective of any scale of project anywhere. That has been a problem with India. I'll just take a pause here and then come back. We were talking about project integration management, which was the first row on the thing, which integrates the various process groups. And we spoke about 7 processes on project integration management, which means the project integration management gets the data from each of the 7 processes. And each process as a data has got every process, which means each of the 49 processes in this tabulation, what I shared, has got inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. If you see here, this is only talking about only 7 processes which are pertaining to project integration management plan. And every process has got inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. If you see the project charter, which is the first document, just for the sake of example, let's only talk about project charter. It says business document, which means there must be a business case that should be written on this project charter, which is nothing but a data. And then agreements. Is there an agreement that I received as a mandate, or I have to agree upon certain things to deliver, which means it could be MOU, it could be purchase order, it could be LOI, it could be a work order, it could be a tender document which is signed, or it could be a mandate given, it could be RFP, it could be anything else, which means it's an agreement to execute, or it is an agreement to appoint actually. And number 3 here is enterprise and environmental factors. What are the environmental factors of the enterprise itself? There are environmental factors unique to that enterprise actually. So those things should be captured at the project charter level. Then organizational process assets. For example, someone will actually have a lessons learned register already. That is actually every organization will have a process. Someone will be operating on a Tally. Someone will have some other MAS system. Someone will have some SOP which is operating, which is organization specific. There must be some process which is followed in an organization, which are assets of that organization actually, which are operating assets. So this is data which needs to be captured as part of an input, which is to develop a project charter. There are tools techniques which are nothing but we need an expert judgment at that stage. There must be an expert which is in a specific domain, specific knowledge area, and there is a data gathering. It says see this particular tools technique. Data gathering itself is a process which is a tools technique which is globally declared in project management terminology here. Data gathering itself is a specific tools and technique, function on its own actually, and interpersonal team skills, which means it's conducting the building, and it's a soft skill, communication skills, how to manage, and how do you conduct meetings, and what is the output is the project charter. One single important outcome of this particular process is the project charter, and there's an assumption log, which means we assume at this stage, because it is the initial stage of the project, we assume like this project charter is prepared on this assumption, which means we say, for example, 25 days of working is permitted, and there will be a monsoon on this particular 3 months of duration, and the expected monsoon is so and so. We expect a salary revision of so and so. We expect there are no calamities. So we actually assume certain things and then log them correctly, and then that is part of the project charter. So I will not actually right now on this session talk about the inputs tools technique of each of the process. The project management, each of the 49 processes has got specific detailed inputs, tools techniques, and output for each of the process. I just narrated one of them at a very summary level. So this is about integration management, which is one of the knowledge area. Project integration management starts with the project charter, then it develops the project charter, then the yellow or the amber block is execution, that is do, and then it is controlled and monitored. Then act means it is physically executing. At that point, if there is a change, it goes back to the planning, and then actually you do, then check, monitor, then execute, close the project. This is exactly the flow of what we were discussing a few minutes ago. If you see, all of them actually pertain to the data only.
So I think
I think this is too detailed. If the audiences are interested in listening to each of them, I can explain. But we'll get into the question and Q&A session. Make it interactive. If you can go to the next one.
That's it. I think that's end of the presentation.
That's the end of it. Yeah. So I can continue talking about all the 7 or. And I have got contents for all the 49, but it becomes too much of a project management session, but less of a, what would be, it may not be, I think it may be boring to talk too much now.
No, I think, sir, thank you so much. I think the amount of detailing on what your presentation was, I think that itself is a huge wisdom and knowledge for us. And whatever chats I've been seeing, people have been really, really keen to learn more about it. And I think it's an eye opener. I think the 2 basic things as a takeaway from a perspective of businesses, definitely any activity, be it a new business, be it an existing business, if we take project management as an approach, I think you always stand to succeed in a large way. I think that is one of the biggest takeaways I understood. Well, it need not be a project by itself. Any activity you do, you could actually boil it down to initiatives and start working on it. It could be anything. And I think thank you so much for that discussion.
Yes, I'll just put it in a different, but in MSME scenario, in MSME scenario, in Indian working environment, okay. it is called initiatives or a specific task or a specific need. Anything which is requiring a specific need to be object. For example, an entrepreneur can actually say, I wanted to grow my revenue by 200% in next 3 years. This should be declared as a project, and it should be, there must be a plan, there must be some focus methods, and then follow these practices, then it is achieved. I have to enhance my production capacity by 200%. So that is if it is declared as a project, then it is this process to be implemented. Done. I will take the question and answers or chat now, please.
Great. Thank you for that. So the first question, obviously, there's a lot of positive appreciation on this. People are asking for the presentation, so we will try and see how we could probably help them in that. So the first question is by Rajul. She speaks about, the question says that is the same planning can be done for a new product development? Your answer, sir, is this process management can be done for a new product development, or a project management approach can be done for?
Yes, absolutely, yes. No, yes, it is very much actually applicable for new product development. I'll take an example. In driving the importance of that. For example, in IT, okay, let's say a large project, let's say TCS and some other organization in some other part of the world pitches for a large project. Let's say some 2 billion project, and TCS may quote, let's say, $2 billion. Just an hypothetical example to give a perspective of this. And he would say, I'm bidding it for a $2 billion. It could be a new product development, let's say for a banking software, and to be rolled out globally. And some other company would say, I'm building it for $1 billion. And TCS may say, I will actually employ 150 PMP certified professionals, 150 numbers, and I will take 2 years to do it and operate it. And the other person will say, no, I will do it at only 5 members of PMP certified. Rest of them are project managers, but I will have 500 people, but they are not certified project managers. So he will say, I will employ 500 people and $1 billion. TCS may say $2 billion, 150 PMP certified person. Actually, this 2 billion will win the race, which means globally the practices and the kind of premium that they will enjoy. That is because the PMP certified people, when they are employed, they will follow this process on any project. When this process is followed, globally it is known, the outcome is guaranteed. So it is a specialist thing. So any product development, whether it is a very, very small or whether it is very, very big, only the implementation scale may be different. Approach is exactly same. The operation is exactly same. Operating this project is exactly same. New product development or new service development in marketing terminology, yes, it is applicable. It is very much actually, it is very important to apply this.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question is from Sachin Tamane, and he asks, I would like to know how can we increase the product management process, project management awareness among the industry stakeholders. It is very relevant and a need of the heart. So your take on this, sir.
Yes. So there is formal education which gives project management. Like in India, there is it is not a popular courses on project management are not available. Like physics, chemistry, mathematics, engineering. Project management is not a very popular courses. There are only very few project management courses which are done post-graduation diploma, or then it is not a very popularly academic course. This Project Management Institute has got a rich of knowledge. I myself is a trainer on project management skills. I can train people for project management skills, which is relevant for them in the industry, which are relevant for them on the domain, and help them as a consultant to run their own project for their own organization. And also, I would actually put it into 3 parts. There are students who wanted to expedite, project management as a career. Yes, the basics levels of skills training can be done. And there are working professionals in MSMEs kind of organization with 3 to 10 years of experience wanting to implement some project. They need a skill, they need some skills. Yes, that skills could be given. That is little more than the basic requirement And there are people who wanted to become a project manager by profession and take up project as a full-time career. Then they can get certified in project management. I can train them on project management skills.
Fantastic. I think that actually answers a lot of questions. So we will share the details of Sir to all of you, and do connect with him and do work on your career path or your business needs excellence model, and definitely we will be more than happy to do that. So the next question is from Dikta Prasanna Marathe sir. He says, how one will convince stakeholders to have a PMP professionals on board? Okay, so the question is, how should one convince stakeholders, and especially the board of directors, to have, or the investors?
Very interesting question. Very interesting question. Very relevant question. See, a stakeholder should be first of all told about the PMI's practice. PMI is the most ethical, transparent organization. I think it was established in 1964. A stakeholder, as a project manager or as a contractor, if he is a stakeholder convincing a sponsor who is a client, should show the practices that is being used and the processes that is being followed by a PMP certified person, and the benefits out of it could be obviously explainable. So first of all, it is integrity actually. When I said change request, this is the follow-up process. And let's say the monitoring and controlling, this is what we are going to control. This is the kind of documentation we are going to maintain. And this is the kind of reporting that we are going to give. If these things are all put forward at the time of discussion to the relevant stakeholders, and let's say the stakeholder will be managed like this. And if these things are told, then a service provider will be seen as real service providing person, not just a service delivering person. Not as a person who just gives service and run away. For example, let's say a builder comes and then a client is asking, can you give me a building? If the builder says, I'll give this working drawing to you at the end of the project when I give the key. I'm not going to give the key alone. I'm going to give this drawing, and I'm going to give it save it on a pen drive. I'm going to put it on a cloud storage. I'm going to document it, and I'm going to give it to digitized, certified. Is it not important then?
True. Interesting. I think, thank you. And last question, I guess, till now is Mr. Bhai Mukesh Falor. He asks this question: how can we know that a particular project is getting off track, and how do we mitigate these risks related to off track projects?
Absolutely. It is very relevant question. See, a project is actually planned and measured in milestones. Okay. Milestones in terms of deliverables. A deliverable is a tangible product which is ready to use. And a milestone could be various timelines actually. If a duration is, let's say, 10 weeks, there must be a plan to say, I will actually assess. It could be done in Excel sheet. I've been doing it in Excel sheet actually. There's a format which I've developed called a milestone activity tracker, which I used to call it as a milestone activity tracker. I will actually pick up this example and then say how I track it. Let's say there is a simple worksheet which is at a summary level. First is a list of activities. First column is list of activities. Serial number, list of activities. Let's say there are 30 activities. I would actually prefer it not to be more than, the list of activities should be printable in one A3 sheet. And then subsequent things are all, are much more detailed than a summary. At a summary level, at a milestone level, let's say some 30 activities, the next column should be who will be doing. That means stakeholder name, the performing stakeholder name. It could be contractor, worker, labor, manager, accountant, technician, programmer, whatever is the stakeholder's name. So activity, stakeholder name, and then start giving the deliverables. For example, let's say a design concluded, yes, no, or a project charter sign off done, yes, no, specification sign off done, yes, no, quantities done, yes, no, there is a vendor appointment for delivery of material done, yes, no. And the next is physical delivery of material, execution start, execution end. So pick up these milestones like this in some 7-8 milestone. Now you get a blank, cells between these rows, which means activity name is pre-written, stakeholder name is pre-written. There are milestone stages which is relevant for our project. Put the date there. The blank cells will have dates, which means let's say 30 rows and some 10 columns, you will have 300 dates. Simple. Which is printable on one A3 sheet. See, when I used to do it on an Excel sheet. Now there are multiple methods of sharing a common Excel sheet or actually making conditional format. There are multiple other tools available now. So even if it is printed and then pasted available at the site and reviewed, if it is done, mark it as green. If it is not impacting, if it is not done and it is already overdue than the planned dates, mark it as amber if it is not going to impact the final end date. Mark it as red if it is anticipated as it will actually change the end date. If this is the basic approach, each stakeholder will have to look for his own row, because one row is one stakeholder, one column is one activity. So every column will have a stakeholder. So there is a stakeholder in a column, there is a stakeholder in a row. So activity, it meets an activity, which is nothing but a date. So all these things are communicated in one Excel spreadsheet. And every day, if you keep on saying done or not done, conditional format in such a way, link it with today, and then make it as bold. Look for a bold cell. If it is bold cell, mark it as green. If it is not bold cell, then I don't have to see other stakeholder, which means this activity tracker will actually de-risk. If I am actually answering the question of how do you plan and identify risk, will it de-risk time, will de-risk or will alarm the risk about scope deviation. If the time is actually running and if it is not executed, which means there is a scope overrun. If payment is not done and work is affected, which means there is an alarming of cost overrun. And if it's a mere delay, no change in scope, no change in cost, it is just a delay. So it will, this particular summary milestone tracker will keep on alarming. So you can link it with detailed plans of other sheets actually. So it is very important to track the make a clear planner or a tracker.
I think that was such an amazing explanation. Okay, so the last question for the day, which is by Ankur, is asking what is the difference between project management program and CAPM, that is Certified Associate in Project Management? Are there two different courses?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, they are different courses. See, there are, I think, 7 or 8 different courses or certifications rather provided by PMI. Please log into pmi.org and then check for various courses that are, various certifications that are available. Okay, I will just take an example of PMP course. PMP is Project Management Professional. CAP is one level lower, which means the eligibility criteria is lesser. Someone who is a graduate plus, I think it is 4,500 working hours or 1,500 working hours of project management experience and eligible and earning some 35 training hours is the eligibility criteria for applying to become a member in PMI. Once he becomes a member or once his application is approved, then he has to take up the course material which is called PMBOK, which is Project Management Book of Knowledge, study that and then give an online exam which lasts for 400 hours of 200 questions. Wherein for a CAPM, the eligibility criteria is little lesser, so the difficulty level and the expertise level required is much lesser. And there are other other certification courses called Project Risk Management course. There is something called Program Management course. I was talking about a group of project when it is managed is called program. So there is a certification called Project Program Management certification. Okay, so the skills required to manage a project is different from skills and tools techniques required to manage a program. And these days, last 2 years, Project Management Institute is giving a lot of thrust on agile project management. Till now, till last year, it was actually based on a sequential execution of interdependent activities and risk management and executing. Now, agile has come into place. I'm getting a news that a lot of questions being asked are agile driven. So agile is very popular right now, or rather known only in IT industry. It is matter of time actually it picks up in the next revision of the course curriculum for PMP. Agile will become the existing curriculum of PMP certification is tied only up to I think August or September. They are going to revise the syllabus now. So maybe with the COVID situation, it may get extended or then it is likely to be more of agile in future. To answer the question, CAPM is a different certification, PMP is a different certification.
Amazing. I think that was amazing. One question which I believe, I think it would have been for me, which was primarily asked by Rushabh, I think this is for the first one, which was how to tell a story by seeing the data. Very, very simple. I'll give you a very easy example, and let's go back to mythology, and especially during the pre-COVID or COVID times where we had a lot of issues and we had at home, we were looking at Ramayana and Mahabharata. So, the entire process of Ramayana and Mahabharata as a concept was a storytelling. And you can see in the Ramayana and Mahabharata also how data was used. And I'm just trying to draw an analogy. The first thing is whenever somebody is giving you a story of Ramayana, he speaks about a couple of things. He says that, Ram was a very, very able son who was supposed to be the king, but his father had he had two other stepmothers, and his father was under the obligation of a boon, which were again two boons. So one of the stepmothers asked two boons, which was one, Mr. Ram has to go to Vanvas for 14 years, and then he stayed there for 14 years. In the last 3 years, he got into a situation where his wife was abducted by a demon king, and then the demon king had 10 heads. He had 4 brothers, his 3 brothers. His entire kingdom was made of gold. So you see the amount of data points which you can actually create a story when you're going to talk about Ramayana. And I'm just trying to explain this in a very simplest way, just to give you a perspective that a storytelling with data, and this is just a small example. Now, let us talk about a real life situation. Imagine a situation where I am coming to you as a sales guy and trying to pitch a product of, say, ABC of my company, or my consulting services. So I create a first story by telling, how important is data for your business and what has been the key challenges in your life, why you couldn't use data. And that is one way of telling, where I create a situation and try and explain to you. But if I tie the same situation by telling, there has been 3 companies like you who have been going through the process of what we did and helped them, and they have actually reduced their cost by almost 24%. And these 3 companies have actually grown in their business by the last CAGR growth of 20%, and they have grown year on year by 24%. So they are actually growing beyond the industry, and their attrition rate has come down by 3%. Their breakages have come down, the wastages have come down by 2%. So here is where I can try and explain to you the data part on a particular pitch using a storytelling. And the storytelling would be about how they started their business when they didn't have anything. And now, because of the fact that they have been using data, they're trying to adopt to data practices, trying to adopt the project management practices also, and which has helped them to come to this level. So Rishabh, if you need to put across a story with data, and this is somewhere you would probably try and attempt to do. And this could be more refined, this could be more focused, it could be either one of a sales pitches, it could be also one of the process of, sharing to your audience. It could be a board meeting or an annual general meeting call, where you build up a story for you to ensure that people understand. Because given the fact is the human mind works from storytelling. And I was talking in the morning session, in the morning session, I don't know, you were part of it, very simple. If somebody tells me that, you're a very good friend of mine, Rishabh, and you tells me, Venkatesh, you know what, I've been to Singapore. It's such an awesome place. You should try once. The first thing is I would not think twice, because I have a trust factor, and humans work on the trust factor. The second part is you also speak to me that, you know what, Venkatesh, I had gone through Singapore Airlines. I booked the ticket 15 days before. My total cost of coming and down was not more than 10,000 bucks. And that's where the offer I got. So all these data points actually excite me, enthuse me, and probably make me believe that, I need to go to Singapore. And you will never ever question the hotel, or you'll never ever question the service of the hotel, because the person who is trying to recommend you is your friend whom you've been trusting with. And that is the way the human psychology works. So anything what we buy today is, all the marketeers today talk about a story. There is a storyline when you buy a particular FMCG product. There is a storyline when you buy a particular services. And there is a storyline for everything what we try and talk. So it's important to understand that we understand stories. We only believe in stories, because our life has been revolving around building stories. So it's important, and that's the reason if you see there are so many storytellers, you suddenly see a gamut of people talking about storytelling. Or what we intended to do there was to also add a bit of data points, so that the storytelling with data makes it more intense, more convincing with the data, so that it could achieve an objective what you want to do. So that's what I sense. You could get a sense of what we are talking about, how to tell a story by seeing the data. So is that making sense, Rishabh? Yeah. Okay. So any other questions? So thank you so much, all of you, for your time. It has been a pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining on the first day. Thank you so much, Shivraman sir. It has been a pleasure to have you on here. We've been trying to discuss this for a long time. I remember we both have been talking about it for a long time, but it's been really nice. It's better late than never. I think it has been really honored for you to come on our time, give us our time. And thank you so much for this wonderful, insightful PMI session.
You can actually, if you can share my contact number, anyone wants any knowledge to be, required on project management skill, I'm actually more than happy to share any further knowledge actually.
Definitely, sir. So what I'm going to do that, we'll just check with you whether a couple of these slides can be shared. We have the email.
Yes.
So we will share this slide with your phone number and the details and probably some programs which you could probably do with some dates, so that if somebody could be keen, they definitely share it with you.
I just narrated an example when you said story, something last, to end the session. If an objective is to travel from, let's say, home to office, and if my objective is to travel by car, and if I'm actually prepared to go on a car with myself alone safely on a COVID situation, I will actually not look for whether it is Hyundai, or whether it is Maruti or Honda, or whether it is a Wagon-R. I will not actually see, because I am not going to buy it. If I am buying it, I will actually go to the specification, color, dealer, registration, cost of fund, everything I will analyze. So that's a different story to understand. Now I'll actually put a Uber, Ola, just book. Then I have a choice to decide instantly. I will book a SUV. I will book a micro, mini, travel, exit. So there is two different approaches. The objective remains same. Traveling, let's say, from home to office safely in a car.
Absolutely. So I think wonderful to conclude. Thank you, all of you. So tomorrow, please log in at 6 o'clock. I'll be sending again the email, and my team will send it to all of you. Tomorrow we have a very interesting lady. Her name is Ms. Beverly. She is a marketing director for Intermiles. Intermiles is jet privilege company which has been moved up, and she's going to have another fascinating story about how data has actually moved the jet privileged offline card system to an online Intermile system. And she's going to be sharing the experiences of how data has helped a company like Jet. And just to share with you, despite whatever the challenges Jet faced during those times with jet privilege as a vertical was the most profitable vertical, and Intermiles is now driving this entire jet privilege initiative, and that is actually taken to all the airlines. So looking forward to all of you tomorrow at 6 o'clock, and we will have Beverly talking to us on her journey and the case study of how Jet and Intermiles Group uses data, and especially in the most interesting sector known as loyalty program. So loyalty program is something which most of us try and attempt, and there has been too many loyalty programs which we have lived with. So let's understand from her how loyalty programs and data can help us grow our business. Signing off. Thank you so much again, sir. Thank you so much for all of your time. It's been a pleasure. Have a lovely evening.